Welcome to another packed Primetime Muscle. I'm Tim Wilkins, as always, joined by Hall of Fame bodybuilder Chris Cormier.
That's what's up. How you doing, baby?
You looking good.
Thank you, my
as
brother.
always. And the one and only Tarek Elgindi, super promoter.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's great to be here. I love the outfit Chris is wearing. Looks like a priest from Minnesota. Looks very nice, Chris. I'm glad to see the suit is back.
Thank you, baby.
Don't ever call me baby again, okay?
Baby doll.
That would be my wife.
Well, before these two lock eyes like Chris and Flex back in the day, let's get to our topic, because we do have a very full show. A lot of turmoil lately with one of our top 5 contenders, Nick Walker. Changing coaches midstream, changing podcasts. What's going on with all that?
Here's the deal. His life is going to be scrutinized. And I think that in bodybuilding, since we started social media, we've had those guys that carry on the legacy of the category. They might not even be the Mr. Olympia for that specific category, but the crowd just loves them. You're talking about Jeremy Buendia. He was a movement. Chris Bumstead, he is a movement. And in the open is Nick Walker. Whether you like it or not, that guy is so popular. People are so attracted by what he represents. He's the all-American bodybuilder. I mean, his name doesn't get more American than that. Nick Walker. He's massive.
The mutant.
You know, and then he also carries a little bit of those Branch Warren fans, right? Hey, I might not have the prettiest lines, but I'm the most hardcore bodybuilder of my time. And there's going to be tremendous scrutiny about him changing coaches, right? People are going to say, well, Nick Walker is in trouble. He's changing coaches again. Nick Walker this and that. I believe that Nick Walker's best days were with Matt Jensen. I think Matt Jensen is a student of the game. He's a young guy. I've actually had a chance to judge Matt and the USA's, and he's also an incredible competitor. He understands conditioning, and he's a really, really cerebral guy. But if you look at the results, simply the results, Nick Walker got the best results with Matt Jensen. Now, he can go in a different direction. He can go with other coaches. That's perfectly fine. The thing is that when people change coaches, and like Rami did, Rami changed a lot of times coaches. People start thinking that the guy doesn't know what he wants. And I think a lot of times that's a little bit unfair. I think he's just testing new coaches. If I'm not mistaken, he's back with Matt Jensen, and I think that's great. But if he goes in different directions, that's him just being a cerebral bodybuilder, trying to find out what works best for him.
Now, Chris, we know what every bodybuilder wants. We want to be better. You want to be bigger. You want to be harder. You want to finish ahead of the guys that beat you last time. But what does that do inside a guy's head to change coaches this close to the big one?
Tim, that's I just think he was better. He was better off with Matt Jensen. I think they had some type of falling out, some type of bickering or something. But I always understand if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's what I understood. And I think he was just trying to find someone that can help guide him possibly in the same direction that Matt was. I didn't think it was going to end up in the same result. It's a different mindset behind what you're doing. It's a super risky situation. And I think he regretted it, but didn't really want to say, hey, I messed up. I need to try to mend the fences. And you don't want to burn bridges like that. When you have a good thing going with a good coach, reputable coach, you want to do what you can to stay respectful relationship. And I feel like he's going to place better just by getting back with him. I don't know what's going to go on with the podcast situation. That's a whole nother situation. If I was him, I would just put out as much material as possible.
No, that brings up a good question, because you didn't have to deal with that when you were competing, but now you're so busy with a lot of the media ventures that you're involved with, as well as coaching. As a competitor, would you have had time for that stuff? Or do you think it's got to be part of your brand to keep you out there engaged with the fans?
Yes, this just wasn't, well, I've had a movie, I had some other videos I can even show you sometime. I was doing videos in my room, in backstage, and in the gym. I kind of like did that in the 90s, and it's never been seen, but I just found a lot of footage, and I have a lot of footage that people they had no idea that I was even doing.
The unreleased Biggie tapes.
Unreleased. I even got Kobe Bryant in one of my videos.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So he's in one of the videos. You'll see in the gym. He was looking at me like I was a star. Like, no, you the star, Kobe. He said, no, you the star, real deal.
Good times.
Yes.
So, and they had the big video recorder video. And
yeah, well, it was like you have to get them. It's not like you have a phone, so you got to make sure that you're trying to videotape this stuff. But I'll show you sometime.
So what do you think with the podcast? It was a hostile with Fuad.
So I think Nick Walker he's a strong personality. And if you look at that podcast, I actually like them. They do a great job. Fuad is a great guy, and I had a chance to judge him as a bodybuilder too. He was a great bodybuilder. Ian Valliere is on that podcast. You're talking about strong personalities, and those guys they're really open. They're the generation that they just say what they want. And sometimes things can get overlapped. Feelings can get overlapped. We don't know what happened, but the overall idea is that they might not be doing it anymore, or they might come back and do it. I don't really know what the future is, but Nick Walker is a statement online, and he needs to be online. I invite him quite often for Olympia TV, and he's always a great participant. He sometimes wants to join some of the lives that he wasn't invited. That's how captivating he is. So it's not only a great bodybuilder, but Nick Walker is also a great movement online, and he needs to keep up with both of them. He needs to go to the gym, lift weights and diet, and then he needs to go home and say, now I gotta produce my content. Because if he doesn't do that, he loses money. And I also think that some guys, they feed off that rivalry between how my body is and the perception of the public. They grew up learning those two things, and sometimes they gotta, if the public thinks I'm that great, I gotta put the work in the gym, right? And if I put the work in the gym, I wanna show in my content.
Well, this is this generation is much more involved in feedback and putting the videos out, putting the content out, the podcast, and getting the opinions that you all have and feeding off of that as validation for what they're doing. But that begs the question, because we talk about this. Everybody thinks that every coach has some guru trick that when they get 2, 4, 8 weeks out is going to know something about carbs and manipulating insulin and spiking for perfection. But what they're forgetting is you are a holistic coach. Not just mind-muscle connection, but why are you doing this? What is your business mindset? How are you connecting your persona out and making money on that while you can? Because this could be a really limited run. Not everybody's going to be Kamal El-Garni or Hadi Chupan, or Dexter Jackson, where they're 51, still doing it. You got to make money while you can. So how would you coach him? You start making waves with sponsors, you're running into trouble. How would you coach him to maintain the balance throughout the entire?
Some of it's going to come from maturity. And a lot of times competitors, when they're at a young age, making decisions, and sometimes making decisions under duress on a diet, which some of the worst decisions I ever made in my life when I was on a diet. And so when you're on a diet and your mind is, you're not full of carbs and all, that type of thing, you can make some off decision. I think you do some spur of the moment stuff and you regret it later. But just being more mature with some of your decisions. Yeah, I know he wants to be the best he can. He's made comments of being Mr. Olympia this year, and I mean, you're gonna need the best people behind you. And getting back with Matt Jensen, I think that's probably one of the things that's gonna help him solidify that promise.
How would you capitalize on some of this to make sure that the whole business of being that bodybuilder is taking into account as it would be the perfect world to go to Dubai, shut the world out, go to Kuwait, shut the world out, get on a hotel next to, all you do is work out in the morning, take a break, eat, take a nap, anabolic chicken, and go back at night and work out. How glorious is that? But when you're here, you've got to have everything going on at once. How would you maybe guide that to making sure he's making money and making gains?
Well, Brendan Curry is not the same generation as Nick Walker. Nick Walker turned pro in 2018 or 19 at the North Americans. And Brandon Curry turned pro in 2008. You're talking about 10 years in the evolution of social media. For Brandon Curry to isolate himself and to train in Kuwait and become Mr. Olympia is what he knows is the best thing for him, is what he learned from guys like Chris Cormier, Flex Wheeler. He goes, those guys, they isolate. For Nick Walker, it doesn't work like that. You can't tell these guys, Ian Valier, Nick Walker, hey man, you're going to be in a place, not posting anything, just working out. That's not their lifestyle. And the supplement companies right now, they require these guys to do some basic work almost every day promoting their brand on social media. My advice to Nick Walker is this: understand who you are, and who you are is great. You're a movement. People love you, just like they love Chris Bumstead. He might be the most popular guy in the open category. People love Nick Walker. He needs to understand there's going to be tremendous scrutiny on his physique and also on his personal life. And he needs to protect himself and not care. When Chris was coming up, Flex, they had to answer to one guy, Joe Weider, right?
Joe Weider.
So they needed to make that guy happy. Right now, they need to make millions and millions and millions happy so they can continue to make money. And they're making a lot of money on the internet. A lot of these guys on these videos, they make a lot of money. So the scrutiny is higher, but the reward is also higher.
Well, they had two people to be nice to, Joe Weider and the guy that was waiting your table at the firehouse to make sure your food got there fast enough.
That's right. And the purses are higher, making a lot more money these days than we did back in the day. So, I mean, I think that you need to, like Tarek said, you're under a lot of scrutiny. I grew up in a sport, so everything I did, good, bad, or the ugly, everyone knows, because it's like we all grew up together. So, everyone's watching. You have a great set of parents behind you that's supporting you. That's very important. So, Nick, I would just say, hey, man, just watch your steps. Think things through before you just do them, and go get some titles, man.
Well, from the early Weider magazines to the podcasts of today and to Primetime Muscle, there's been quite an evolution of coverage over the years and how bodybuilders present themselves and how they make a living. And we're going to be talking about a lot of that when we come back on Primetime Muscle. And we're back on Primetime Muscle, really talking about the evolution of the coverage of bodybuilding. And we all know that it started off back in the day with those early Weider magazines. If anybody's seen the movie Bigger, really gives you some insight into how Joe had this passion for the sport and wanted to take it to the masses. Early on, you know this, and let's say middle of the way, you guys had a contract with Joe, and that was your exposure to the world.
Yes, you're correct, Tim, and he was the end all. He was the end all be all, because that's where you wanted to go. Woodland Hills. I would take the drive there at least 2 or 3 times a week, just to do, talk to the different writers, and you would have access to all the different libraries of muscle magazines throughout the years, and it would be it's almost like a playground for some of the top bodybuilders. I remember when I first met Joe. He asked me to pose for him, asked me did I have legs. I'm like, do I have legs? I got some legs, Joe. And
you broke them out.
Yeah,
you had to break them out.
Yeah, and then he told me, I want to put you under contract. Come back after the USA. I was still an amateur at the time, so I left there in tears. I was so happy with just meeting the man. I'm like, man, anybody who's anybody, they've been through those doors, and that was just the aura that whole building, that whole scene was like.
You made it. When you were there, you knew you made it.
Yeah, you made it.
Okay, so Muscle and Fitness, then Flex, and somewhere along the way, Muscular Development came along.
So Chris's previous generation and mine were 10 years apart, maybe 15.
15.
15, yeah.
Probably.
So I am the magazine generations. I am Flex magazine, muscular development. There was even a rivalry. The rivalry peaked in the 2008, 2007, 2009 Mr. Olympias, when a lot of guys were signing contracts with Flex. Other guys would sign contracts with muscular development. You know, Steve Blackman, he was very active with muscular development, and guys would jump from one magazine to the other. And the peak of the rivalry was when Jay was with Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness, and then there was a cover of a magazine between Dexter and Phil Heath, and Jay actually won the Mr. Olympia in 2009 and said, I'm going to muscular development. And the writers, right, Chris?
But check this out, Tarek. Before you were probably born a little bit, there was a guy named Lee Haney that was with Joe Weider, that was a reigning Mr. Olympia. He went to Twin Lab.
Oh, yeah.
And he had that big nutritional line behind Twin Lab. And that was just before he won his last Mr. Olympia. It might be 89 or 90 in that area, but I remember him leaving, going to Twin Lab, and everybody was like, whoa, he did that, he did that. You know, it was that type of thing, and it was, you know, that was the start of it, but yeah, he's right. You know, after that, it was like another lump of guys that came up and made the switch over.
There was a different feel. Muscle fitness at that time was almost mainstream. Sure, we had the big pros, but there was the how to get abs, and it was almost turning into just a grocery store magazine where muscular development was that hardcore veins on the cover thing.
So Flex was hardcore, and muscular development was also hardcore, and they battle it out. Like you said, Muscle and Fitness, and then it came Men's Fitness, it came Men's Health. They became a little bit more mainstream. But the hardcore bodybuilder was going to Flex and muscular development. And then it was the beginning of the forums.
Yeah, but also the nutritional lines. Because I was with Joe for 7 years. I'm a Weider guy. I still consider myself a Weider guy. But I had to go for the bigger paycheck with Muscle Tech in the year 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Joe, I mean, they were dragging their feet with calling me. My phone wasn't ringing. It was Christmas, and, you know, Muscle Tech kept calling, and kept inviting me out to dinners and all that stuff. And I just thought, I'm gonna go and date this girl.
You gotta do what you gotta do. The hotter girl in the prom are coming out.
And Muscle Tech at one point, they had all the best bodybuilders, you know. They were in the magazines, they had Hydroxycut, which reached millions and millions of consumers. They eventually purchased Xenadrine. I had a chance to work with them with Xenadrine. But we've seen an evolution, and right now, we're seeing the evolution to social media.
Well, we became a generation because that was the hard thing. So you guys would finish a show, you'd finish an Arnold, you'd finish an Olympia, and it was December, and we'd get those results in the magazines in March. Yeah. We were 3 to 5 months behind. We can't deal with that anymore. We're now.
But like Tarek said, the forums did start around that time. So that's when you got the early on start of the social media. It was a social media, but it was that time of social media. But it was very important, and everyone was tuning in, and it was getting very popular very fast.
Our chief operating officer of the Olympia, Dan Solomon, Digital Muscle, what was the precursor to do? Was it Pro Bodybuilding Weekly?
Pro Bodybuilding Weekly. And I got to give credit to GetBig.com,
yes.
Right? Ron Avidan, GetBig.com. That was the website.
That was the thing to go to.
Man, he had no...
Bro, I was ranked number 2 in the world. I went number 1 1 second, but I was ranked number 2 in the world, 2 and 3 in the world. I love the rankings, man. We got to bring that back somehow.
Which is guys that, you know, would get more hits. And so Ron Avidan, Get Big. The muscular development forums were very popular. You would see prejudging of the USAs. They would have pictures, and the forums would just be flying with people typing from all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first time you would connect with people all over the world in one instant about what just happened. And then we've evolved to where we are right now, which is the social media channels, where we produce content almost immediately about what happened.
Dennis, the Menace podcast, Hostile, you got Desktop Bodybuilding and BS.
Nick
is doing a good job. A lot of people don't like him. I like the guy. I think he's funny as shit. And Yeah, he's I met him, when he was competing, when he was living in Venice. But, just seeing him coming up to the ranks and then finding a niche for himself, it dropped off for a minute, but then he came back. He's doing better than ever now. Shout out to you, Nick.
Shout out, Nick.
The thing about Nick Trigili is this. So the people that have known him, Nick Trigili is a Mr. USA's. And that's a great title. Nobody can take that away from him. And that's a title he shares with Chris Cormier, Phil Heath, Brendan Curry, Flex Wheeler. So the guy understands bodybuilding. When he turned pro, he was wearing red trunks in the finals. And he was a super heavy. And he was battling it out against John Ward from San Diego.
Ward, the guy I was training.
Yeah, John Ward was in great conditioning, but Nick had better lines and he was bigger. And we called a confirmation round, and Nick Trigili prevailed.
But I thought Nick was losing at first, and then Nick got him at the end because loss of control of his abs and stuff like that. It was
close.
Yeah, it was close.
Once Nick Trigili won the super heavy, he went to the overall. And he obviously he was massive, he was huge. And he started posing. He was kind of a jokester on stage. He was very confident. George Farrell was his coach. And George Farrell was screaming, "Stop effing around, stop effing around." That same personality that Nick Trigili had on stage that day is the same personality he has on his show. He's funny. He will poke at you. He will come after you. He is that same guy. And I have a problem with him. I have a beef with him. I just would like for him to cover the USA's, the Nationals, and the North Americans, right after those shows happen, because he's a former Mr. USA's. Put the camera on me. You, Nick Trigili, you as a former Mr. USA's, after those national shows happen, you need to cover the super heavy, which was your division, the heavyweight, the light heavy, and the middleweight for all the national shows. I'm expecting that from you. I'm calling you out right now.
Well, we've got that. We've got Muscular Development still has a nice podcast as well. But each one has almost their genre of who they have. The old pros, which current pros, like Hostile has, like you said, Ian, Nick.
Hostile has the young pros, but I'm a huge fan of Dennis the Menace because I am that generation, and when I see those guys talking about it, I feel like I was there with them. I was in the magazine, and Dennis James is one of those guys that he keeps it so interesting. He really commands that. I give him a lot of credit. I want to mention before we go to Chris, I want to mention two guys here. Xavier's from Desktop Bodybuilding. He does a great job. The competitors love him, and he's one of the best in the business.
I've been on that show a couple times.
He's awesome. Xavier's from Desktop Bodybuilding. Yeah. He understands bodybuilding. But let's talk about, he's a heavy hitter. Nick is strength and power. What that guy has done in terms of engagement is unprecedented. People love what he does. And what he does is not overly sophisticated, but he's straight to the point and he's consistent. He does it every week after every show. And one of the most amazing things in an industry where everybody likes to project themselves, he's never on camera. He's talking about other people. His content is the stars, is never him. And I'm going to also say he has a deep understanding of bodybuilding. He knows bodybuilding, and I respect him for his consistency and how much he loves the sport.
It's interesting because that's a great segue. There are so many guys that they're not just fans. They're guys who have earned their point on the stage. You got a guy like Palumbo with RX Muscle.
Yeah.
And you got guys like Lee Priest who comes on and gives his insights. You've got, I had another one all queued up in my head a second ago. But all these guys, Generation Iron, another one. All these guys have been there, done that. And even the ones that kind of haven't been at that top level like...
not all of them have.
Like the Menace, where he brings on you and Flex and Milos.
Yeah, I like when some people say, yeah, when we used to do it, Chris, how we used to do it. No, I didn't see you backstage, I didn't see you backstage, big homie. No, I didn't see you.
But there are so many guys that do such a great job, and we love that it fosters the sport and keep everybody... And I love when you give him a hard time, and he's trying to think about, when I was posing, I don't remember him to my right. I love that.
Never been.
So I am a big fan of these channels coming up because these guys are fans. Now I make a very, very solid separation between the trolls, the guys that don't know anything and just want to criticize the industry, and the guys that actually understand the sport and put out good content. And at the same time, those guys, they have the ability to criticize bodybuilders, criticize the judging, criticize the events. So there has to be that type of freedom. We live in America, okay? This is a free country, and we are out there. We make money because of social media, so don't be so sensitive, okay? As a judge, as an athlete, as a promoter, as a social media influencer, as somebody, as a legend, don't be so sensitive. We're all on social media. Everybody's benefiting.
Making content.
If somebody criticizes you, don't cancel the channel. Don't cancel. We're not in the cancel culture. We are in the freedom culture.
Well, and we can't forget the Jay Cutler podcast, of course, The Champ, FemFlex Friday, The Fit Rock Star, all the great content coming out of Wings of Strength. Because that was another thing that was so forgotten over the years, was the women's divisions were not as included. They were the women that hung on the open guys during a photo shoot with Pear and Bill Dobbins and all those guys. That was a woman was an accessory. Now then you had Oxygen pop up, Muscle and Fitness hers, and now we've got entire shows devoted to the women's divisions from bodybuilding all the way through wellness and bikini.
Yeah, and not to mention women are, most of the competitors are women nowadays. Way more bikini and now we got wellness and the bodybuilding physique, all that stuff came back, with the help of Jake Wood.
Yeah.
Well, I call FemFlex Friday Femme Fatale because a lot of times on that show, all you have is incredible champions. I mean, you're talking about Alina Popa, Linda Murray, Whitney Jones. I mean, it's
Andrea
packed.
Shaw, Cindy Gillen.
Some of you have the judges. Sandy's there. Camille Perriot is there. Some of the best people in the industry are there. So if you're talking about female content, FemFlex Friday might be the best one out there. But I just love the fact that it's just packed with stars.
Well, and before we go to break, one other great evolution in the sport that we love. While we used to have to wait 3 to 5 months to find out the results, when the forums came along, there was somebody live tweeting it or keeping you up to date. Now we have the podcast, the pay-per-views, and we are so excited, as always, this year to have some very special guests, including the one and only Phil Heath, on this year's pay-per-view that'll be live for all the divisions, and we'll be looking forward to that. I believe it's olympiaproductions.com, and we look forward to that. And our last topic of the day when we come back on Primetime Muscle. This last segment of Primetime Muscle today. We're always so excited to get your comments, and we're always excited to read them because Chris and Tarek get a lot of shout-outs. But
dedicated to you guys.
We thank you so much. I'm going to start off with Arlette_fit over40. I love this podcast, guys. Keep it up. I'm a huge fan. Thank you, Arlette.
My favorite one here is Raymond Jones. Raymond Jones, you should be part of this show. Wherever you are, hit us up. We're going to bring you here. Raymond Jones. Chris swagged out with all that LV and then ruins it with those dad jeans. Where'd you get those dad jeans?
I like that.
Where'd you get them?
Just different places. When
I like shop at Ross Dress for us too. Don't be shy.
I don't have the same taper as I had when I was younger. But
don't be shy. Don't
and
be
I'm
shy.
a father. I'm a dad. So Eddie Spaghetti. This is the coolest bodybuilding show, podcast, etc. Cool guys, great content with laughs and fun times. That's what we like to pride ourselves on. I know everyone talks about me the most on here, like I'm the most famous guy here, per se. But I'm nothing without my lineman on the end. He's the center. He is the guard. And without my quarterback, It's nothing about me. I'm the star running back.
Shove that ball in
But
the hands.
There is no place on the team, on the field without my other counterparts, my lineman and my quarterback.
Well, and you're
Thanks,
not
guys.
you're not just in a normal uniform, obviously, by so many of these comments, Chris. Ugly white 1110. Chris pulling out all the drip from the 90s. Last time Fosachi, now the Louis. Play on, play.
RJ, I can't wait until Chris is sat there dressed as a giant hot dog. we need to pull that out. We're going there. We're going there.
What about GOAT Fitness? Cormier has the best personality in the sport.
I got your back here, buddy. Joe 1075. Tim and Chris, you guys are cool and all, but we all know Tarek is the star of the show.
Thank you. How about this guy? I said last time we talked about Chris Bumstead's smirk, and you guys made it like Tarek is going to get a divorce. He's looking at Chris Bumstead's lips. So this guy goes here. Hate that smirk. Congrats to Miss Tarek on the divorce, though.
Hey, what about this? Daniel Witt. Got to tune in just for Cormier drip week to week.
Week to week drip.
Week to week. That's not one time. That's like week to week. He's dripping.
Chris is like the faucet in my hotel room, nothing but drip.
I appreciate you.
So, thank you all. We look forward to your comments on every episode. Keep them coming. The good, the bad, and how much we love Cormier. We do love doing this show. We love being here with you. But we do want to cover something really important. As we come close to the Olympia, Shaun Clarida may or may not be in the Open and making that big move as the champion of the 212. Guys, is this a wise move? I mean, there's a history of giant killers, but is this a new one?
Yeah, this is going to be tough because as you know, this is a tough lineup, and if it was a smaller show, I'd be more on board with it. But this whole top 10 and 12 people is all vying for trying to get in that top 5 spots. They all have the cachet to make it there. This is a deep lineup. So can you get lost in the shuffle? Yes, you can.
When you're 5'2"?
You can get lost in the shuffle when you're 5'10" in this lineup because this is not going to be any jokes. These guys are getting ready and getting a lot of publicity out there. All the channels are tuning in on this Olympian. Everyone's focused on this one show, which is a lot of pressure. And being the first time competing against the Open, as he did at the Legion, that was great. He caught people, wasn't in the best condition in my opinion, but he was the best man on that stage, and I was all for him winning that show, being qualified for the Miss Olympia. So I just think that, it's just going to be tough to make a dent, I would say. You want to come away with some money, I would just go down to that 212 and
dominate,
handle business right there.
Well, now, to be considered, Chris is correct. Reno, he qualified as an Open winner.
Not down, up. Because he got to go up.
He got to go up.
Yeah.
So he's what, about 180 shredded?
Something like that, yeah.
So the history of the giant killers. A giant killer in our sport, they consider under 5'4". We're talking the Lee Priests, Muhammad Makawi.
Shaun Ray.
Shaun's about 5'6", 5'7", isn't he?
5'5".
5'5"?
Yeah, he wears heels.
Oh, he looks good.
It's funny that we had a discussion who's the greatest 212, and Chris Cormier said,
dude, I was growing up, he was the Michael Jackson.
Can I just finish? Thank you so much. Can I finish? It's my time to put you under the table. You'll have your time to put me under the table.
You've been under the table.
So he said Shaun Ray is the greatest 212 of all times. And I actually went up to Shaun Ray and I said, your boy Chris Cormier is defending you, calling you as the greatest 212 of all times, when we all know you wouldn't share your orange with him backstage.
Yeah, that's right. But you got to give credit where credit is due. I mean, you could say a lot of things about what he says, how he says it, his personality, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, growing up, he was on the cover of Flex magazine when we're still in high school, and he's on a cover. Who else done that?
Well, I had a discussion with him. I love picking on Shaun. He's one of my favorite people to pick. And I said, Mohammed bin Aziza is the greatest 212 of all times. And he said, well, Benaziza competed in only 2 Olympias, and then one of them, he got disqualified. And I'm like, Shaun, well, you also got disqualified from a show too, so let's not even go there, okay? And then I ended up saying, Shaun,
the old Winnie.
Benaziza actually beat Dorian Yates. You spend your whole life trying to beat Dorian Yates. You should have called Benaziza, and maybe he would have told you what to do. But anyways, all jokes aside, Shaun Ray is incredible, phenomenal bodybuilder. If you go to Gold's Gym Venice, if you look at his picture on the wall, that's kind of like the body everybody in the planet wants to have. And his posing, he was just pretty to look. He was also a movement. Shaun Ray was a movement. He was the good-looking, cover of a magazine, the perfect physique. And I pick on him, but I also love Benaziza because for you to go and beat Dorian Yates on the back thickness at the Night of Champions, man, that's like incredible. And I did a live one time with Lee Haney. And Lee Haney said, Tarek, I feared no one in my entire career. He goes, when Dorian Yates came in and placed second to me, I was perfectly fine. How many guys have placed second to me? He goes, there was one guy that my coach actually mentioned to me. And he goes, that guy is good. And it was Benaziza.
Now, I was emceeing the Masters Olympia during Vince Taylor's reign, and Danny Padilla had a couple years in there. Flavio Boccanini, one of my favorites, at 4'10", with a couple of second places. He looks so amazing. Yeah. But you are giving up at 5'2", and for Clarida at 180. You're standing next to Nick Walker. You're standing next to Hunter, who may be in the 270, 280 range. You're standing next to Rami at probably 305 to 310 come Olympia time. You're giving up a lot. You're giving up 2 of you.
Yeah, even at my height, I would think that would be a tough task, because, I just think it's just so easy to get lost in the shuffle in that show, because it's not like we have, a whole lot of call-outs, but are you going to be in the first call-out? Are you going to be in the second call-out? I don't know.
Well, I have to agree with Chris, and Chris is right. If Shaun Clarida was here and he had lunch with us, Chris and I would say, Shaun, you're a phenomenal bodybuilder. You won in Reno. And you have the right to go to the Open. And if you do want to go to the Open, that would be a courageous move. Everybody's going to embrace the effort. But I am sure Chris and I will pull him aside and say, brother, you will make more money in the 212. Your chances of winning the 212 are much higher than getting the place equivalent to that cash.
And I'm sure your wife would enjoy that.
Exactly. This is professional sport, right? It's not only the title, but it's also the money you deposit. And once he gets that check and he's already won the 212, that's a pretty good check. And it would be higher than what I believe it would be his placing. And what if he goes there in the Open and he's on the 4th call out? And right now he's the giant killer. He could be the 212 champion for his brand. That would be awesome.
And with Lunsford out, that opens that spot right back up for him.
Yeah.
And in bodybuilding, you want your respect. Like, I think he earned a lot of respect with his stature and what he brought to the table. He gets respect from everyone. We get that. But now at the end of the day, you need that money. You need to make that money, because that's what it's all about. It's you got your respect. Second thing, you want the money. So
I was just having this talk with one of my buddies a few weeks ago when he was talking about Derek making that jump to the Open and said, what if he's 4th or 5th? I said, that check is smaller than that first place trophy, that first place check as the 212 champ.
But I think he just outgrew that class. I think he just outgrew it. I don't think it's, I don't think he had much choice. To be, as lean as he was at around 260, whatever it was, 260 or so, I just think he outgrew the class now. So I just think his best bet, you do have a guy named Hadi who was 212, and he does just fine at that 3rd place at the Olympia, and he brings home that check, and he's a people champion. I think Derek can be the next people champion.
I agree. And listen, Shaun Clarida, let's potentially put him winning the 212, getting that check. That doesn't prevent him from doing open shows throughout the season. I would love to see that, right? The 212 champion goes into Italy, goes into, Canada and wins an open show. So he doesn't lose that opportunity.
Talking about the best in the world, not about who showed up on that date. It's the best in the world.
Yeah.
The best, the cream of the crop. And like I said, the whole top 10 to 12 they all could be in the top 6.
Well, question for you both, because I know there are some divisions that are harder to find shows than others to keep your competition up, to keep your checks rolling in, engage with the fans, and keep the sponsors behind you. There doesn't seem to be as many spots for a 212 guy to get out there as much as an open guy to get out and just keep working.
Well, I think there's more publicity in the open shows. But I was in Canada this year, and I judged a 212 event. In Brazil, we had a 212 event. There's plenty of 212s, but the open bodybuilding is going to get more publicity. And what I think Shaun Clarida should do is go to a 212 at the Olympia, but when it's time, the season roll up, pick a few shows in the open, and go there and show that you're the giant killer.
Let's check him out on the ball, huh?
Let's do it. Oh.
Okay, this is in the Mr. Olympia, right?
Yep.
212. So you see, like, he has the quads, he has the striations, which I always liked. I would just say, you put together great for the class. You won it before, and you can do it again. And but let's just look at the muscle. Look at the side chest here. I like the most. You can actually keep that hand a little straighter and move it down. Keep that palm up a little bit. But I feel like the shape is there. He's just a lot shorter than a lot of these guys, but he's not built like a short guy.
But at 180 shredded to bits, like up here, you're dominating at 5'2".
Well, he beat Derek Lunsford, he beat Kamal, he beat Regan Grimes, Sergio Oliva Jr. The quads are feathered, right? Look at the glutes, striated glutes right here, Tim. Look at the density on the quads. He's got chest, massive chest on that frame. He's got shoulders, small waist. That's a complete bodybuilder. That is a complete bodybuilder, and it's hard to beat him on the 212. He's always going to be there fighting for the title. And if you're in the open and you got this guy coming up and he's in shape, you're in danger of losing.
Well, Chris, you're down to one of your favorite poses down here with a side, not necessarily a side chest, but kind of a side tri combo. What is putting that extra mass on Shaun Clarida's frame going to do to that midsection and those lines?
Well, that's the thing. That pose right there, you have to have your abs in check. You have to blow out that air, not only trying to flex on your serratus and oblique, but also keeping that bottom tummy tucked in. I just did it. You didn't see it. I would keep that shoulder to shoulder parallel with each other. Dipping that shoulder down is not going to help you. You want to keep that. It's almost like an upside down Dorito chip. You want shoulder to shoulder into the tight waist.
You think he's trying to hit the oblique right there by coming over on the side?
Yeah, he is, but he's putting too much emphasis on it, and it's going to hit that hip bone anyway. So I would just stay upright and keep that shape going in that pose.
Well, moral of the story is we don't know quite where he's going to be just yet. There's some announcements. He may be open. Maybe. We're waiting for some final announcements. He's qualified. That's what we know. And you're all qualified to comment, like, and share, as we talked about earlier. Please share your thoughts on both Clarida and all of these great hosts. We appreciate you every week. Do share this with your friends. And we look forward to seeing you at the Olympia. And, of course, we look forward to seeing you watching this next episode of Primetime Muscle. For the one and only Chris Cormier.
That's what's up.
Tara Kilkendy.
That's what's up.
That is also what's up. And Tim Wilkins. We'll see you next time.